Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another weekly conversation with a children's literature author. This week, I'm talking with Rashin Kheiriyeh. Rashin is an award-winning illustrator, author, animator, and painter who has published over 90 children's books in over a dozen countries. I think I should say that again. Over 90 books in more than a dozen countries, and that comes with about 50 national and international awards as well. Well, that would give us so much to talk about in today's episode. We're here specifically to talk about her newest picture book, The Seasons of Parastoo, a beautiful intergenerational story about missing a parent and celebrating the cycles of nature. Rashin, welcome to the KidLit Love podcast. I'm so glad you're here today.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. And thank you so much for inviting me to your wonderful podcast. I listen to most of them, and I love all the conversation you have recorded so far. I'm very excited.
My cheeks are getting all nice and pink that you listened and you loved it. I appreciate that. And I feel like we need more than a half an hour episode to just dive into the sheer number of books you have been a part of and the amazing things that you are doing. So we're just going to jump right into it. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit of the backstory that got you to those magnificent numbers that I have been rattling off in the introduction. How did you get here in children's lit?
Well, I started my career as an illustrator 23 years ago. So I was born in Iran. I grew up there and I studied graphic design in Iran. And when I was 16 years old, I went to the art school studying graphic design. And then I continued my education for BFA and MFA in Iran. And then I moved to New York in 2011 to go to the School of Visual Art, studying painting. During my high school art school I was going in Iran, I got familiar with illustration for children's literature, and I loved it. And since then, I'm involved with children's literature, and my favorite genre is fiction. And yeah, uh, I've worked so many books, and I'm really love my job.
Yeah, I gotta say, I would love your job too if I could do if I could manage to do what you did. Were you always a reader? Did you love to read picture books or just that came to you in childhood as well? Is that why you gravitated towards it?
Yeah, when I was little, and when I couldn't read. My brother has a series of comic books called The Adventures of Tintin. I was like um, obsessed with those graphic novels, and I just look at the pictures, and after I was able to read, I revisit those graphic novels, and now I understand the words and pictures together. So that was the first reading I remember. Yeah, and before that, my mom read so many picture books, international stories, and also from Persian literature, classic folk tales. Yeah.
So you've
So,
been surrounded by this for a while and it just kind of it led you
right.
to it.
That's true.
Wow. My gosh, I probably shouldn't ask this, but I almost have to. Do you have a do you have a favorite out of all of those 90? I know we're talking about one today, but is there a special genre or a special you know, portion of those books that just kind of speaks to you the most?
Um, so my favorite one, it's hard to tell. I can name a few of them, like Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love. That's my favorite. And this one, the Seasons of Parastoo, is because it's very influenced based on my personal life story. So that's my other favorite. Yeah, I love so many of my books. It's hard to
Well,
tell.
it is. It's like, you know, when someone asks you if you have a favorite child, which of
Right,
course you
exactly.
have to pick. But I'll be sure to put in the show notes a couple of your 90 that are there so that readers, you know, hopefully they'll want to pick up Seasons of Parastoo today, but they'll also be able to see some of the other books that they might want to grab of yours also.
All right.
So let's talk about this beautiful, beautiful picture book. I put in kind of my review in my mind and that I'll put out online is that it's a beautiful book inside and out. And it doesn't make sense really, right? Because it's inside it's all inside the book, but the words, gosh, the beautiful illustrations. It's a book that wants to be hugged. I have lists of books in my notebook, and one of them is books I've hugged. And this is a huggable book, Rasheen. It's a huggable book. I loved it.
I'm so happy. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So why this book? What inspired this one?
Um, so I had a story idea for a while, and when I shared it with my editor Nancy Paulson in Penguin Kids, she loved it, and then I told her that yeah, my inspiration came from my childhood memories of my grandfather in Iran. And my grandfather loved swallows birds. I remember every spring he made nests for them around his house in northern part of Iran. A gesture that resonated deeply and became the heart of my story. And the other thing was my mom, who was a nurse, and we got separated for a while when I was a child due to her duty as a nurse during the wartime. So we've been separated for a while, and I stayed with my grandparents. So that was the another side of the inspiration. So um, yeah, and the um, when I'm telling you a little bit about my background, my childhood, then I will explain more about the inspiration.
Well, as you say that, you know, having read the book, listeners may or may not have read the book, but I just love I now can see the parts of this that are so connected to you in this story. This feels like it could be you in this story.
That's true. That's true. Because the story is about a little girl named Parastoo, and Parastoo means swallow bird in Farsi, in Persian. And so she loved the swallows that live outside her window during the warm seasons. Um, and she always gets sad to see them leave for the winter. But that year was different because, especially difficult because her mom has to leave for some time as well. So it's a flashback to my personal story that her mom was a nurse who travels to the border to care for soldiers during wartime. So that part exactly came from my childhood memories. So Parastoo misses her mom so much, but grandparents are there by her side to help the time go by. So her grandfather encourages her to make bird houses for the swallows' arrival in the spring. So the spring is a symbol of hope in this story. So mom returns and swallows returns as well in the spring.
It's this beautiful kind of full circle, like, you feel so good when you close that last page. It's that full circle kind of moment, and I love how you have the parallel stories of Parastoo and her mom and missing her mom, but then also those cycles of nature, that it can be natural and they loop back. I just love how you have both of those there, for readers to think, okay, literally, this is what's happening, and figuratively, that's what's happening. And so there could just be such good, rich conversations and thinking around a conversation around your book.
That's true.
So, one of the questions I had was actually about the art.
Mhm.
Because lucky, I can ask you about the words, I can ask you about the art. And listeners, if you haven't seen the book, I'm now obsessed with color schemes after reading and looking at your book, because the color scheme you have chosen, it just evokes this wonderful feeling. There's so many feelings that, I don't know, just kind of leap off the page because of the colors you've chosen. They feel muted, but also bright. The end pages are the most beautiful. I don't know what the technical color of that is, Rasheen, but it's this like melon color that kind of jumps off the page. You've got the pages themselves. There's lots of, if not, well, yeah, not all of them, but lots of like double page spreads. So you just open it up and want to lean in, and the background colors. How do you do that from an illustrator's point of view? How did you attempt to bring this beautiful story with these two parallel kind of storylines? How did you actually bring it to life? Like, I want to know how you made those pages.
So literally for color palette, I just followed the seasons. Like imagine like in Iran, we had like 4 seasons and with different colors for each season. So I wanted to show this time passing by like the colors of the season. And Parastoo is a girl that loves she has passion for art and handcrafts and colors. So she amazed by observing the seasons changing by colors. So my color palette just follow the seasons of the nature. But um, it's- so during the warm seasons, I use warm color tone. For winter, I use cold colors. As a visual storyteller, the image came first. I envisioned a little girl flying on the back of a swallow bird in the sky, and she visit her mother and see the important work she's doing, like treating injured soldiers in the war zone. Um, so that was the first image came to my mind, and my favorite image was the scene that Parastoo lays on her mom's lap in the garden, and I use it for the cover image. So that reflects the personal memory I have with my own mother and captures a moment of warmth and connection.
Mm. So those scenes were front and center first, and then everything else kind of fell into place around it.
Right. And I used my medium was oil. I use oil and ink on paper.
Oh, I love that it's old school. I love it. You can
Yeah,
almost I think you can tell. Like when I looked at that, I thought, I know she is old fashioned right now, putting something on
yeah.
paper.
I'm so old-fashioned. Exactly.
Old fashioned in the best way, of course.
Yeah, celebrating traditional way of making art. Yeah,
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, I know for me, there's just even as an adult, there's something so soothing of just getting out the crayons and the colored pencils and just hearing the sound of it across the paper. I love the physical kind of the touch and feel of it. Um, so when I hear illustrators who still really value that part of it, oh, I love it because not that I can do it, but I love attempting the process of doing that. The other thing that really jumped out at me as I don't know if I would say a theme of the book, but just something that was really important to me as I read was just this idea of appreciating just the beauty of everything that was around her, whether it was the colors that are changing across the seasons, whether it was the swallows or just the beauty of all those birdhouses hanging from the trees. I really did get that feeling as well of, you know, time, we don't know what time we have, and we may be missing someone or waiting for someone to come back, but there is beauty in all of the moments regardless. And I really felt like that just jumped off the page at me when I was reading this.
Yeah, that's true. I really wanted to, waiting is difficult. I hate wait for something, but that's a thing that kids needs to learn how to deal with it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about hope and waiting, being patient,
Yeah.
um, and I really wanted to kids see that yeah, it's okay. Sometimes you have to make a calendar and
Yes.
follow the days and wait for something and never give up on hopes.
Yes. I can so appreciate that. When my kids were little, they're all older teenagers now, but when they were little, their dad traveled a lot for work. So would be gone Monday through Friday, come home, for just a little bit on the weekends. And when my younger twins were in kindergarten, I searched for books everywhere that just show them that it is a phase. They come back, things happen. So I really appreciate that message in this book because this was a book that I know they would have needed back then. So I'm
Thank
so glad that children can get that now.
thank you. And the main character Paris too, she's silly. She makes a calendar and checks the days off to help the time pass more quickly. So I wanted to add some sense of humor so kids can get connected with this story easily.
I also do that. I'm the one, Rasheen, who where if I have my to-do list and I did something that wasn't on the to-do list, I write it on there just so that I
Yeah,
can stop and feel that sense of satisfaction.
right.
So, yeah, we were kindred spirits on that page for sure. I think one other thing that I love that you did with the illustrations is just convey this sense of motion across them. I know we are waiting, right? And the seasons are passing, but I love the different ways, when grandpa was reaching her up to put the um birdhouse, you could see the hat moving or I think my favorite page is the second to last page, although the last page has my heart, but the second to last page when mom and daughter are just reunited and you feel the movement of the birds and just the swirling of the wind. I love the emotion, but I love the movement that's on the page too. As the waiting takes place, there's still movement, there's still hope, as you said.
That's true. Yeah, in most of the pages, like wind blows, and yeah, it's always nice and comforting to um, have to enjoy breeze in the nature. It gives like it's like a meditation feeling. It meditates you. So and maybe it came from the my background as an animator to
That's what I was as I was watching this or watching as I was reading it, I was like, yes, this has to come into play. Yes, tell us about that.
when I was illustrating, I also uh, envision it as a like a motion picture, and hear the voice of
Yeah.
like the soothing music that we that we used to see in ASMR videos.
Yes.
So those are some of the influences.
Yeah. Are you or have you always been kind of influenced by nature or the natural world? I know, like we said, we're readers. Were you also, was that something that was also important to you?
Um, yeah, I really enjoy being in the nature, and some of other things that I really inspired by are watching films and animations. These are give me like a sense of new creative influences for my art and my writing. Um, yeah, I would say nature and films.
Well, you have to get your inspiration everywhere. If
Right,
you're writing and illustrating as many books as you have under your belt, it
exactly.
feels like you constantly have to be thinking, what's next? What's next? What's
Right.
next?
Sometimes only a color can inspire you to write a whole book around it.
Yeah.
Like in one of my books, I loved a particular orange, and I said, "Yeah, I have to make a book with this theme." So I illustrated it, and then I mm, put a story based on those illustrations. I make a story based on that. So only it came for with like orange idea.
Wow. I love that. So you have the inspiration, but then more importantly, you follow up, follow through with a book or a project. Wow. What are some of the things that inspire you, like, right now? Like a new color or something else come along? Are you working on something that you could tell us about?
Um, yeah, I'm really excited about my new writing and illustrating. For a new picture book with my wonderful editor, Nancy Paulson. Um, so it's a very inspiring project that I'm looking forward to bringing to life with Penguin Kids. And it's also is about birds.
Ah,
And in that one, the girl lost her bird. So that's a journey
yep.
she has to take to find it.
So we've got a couple of themes running through
Right,
the books that are coming out.
right. Yeah, but in most of my writings, I really got inspiration from my childhood memories, like growing up in Iran, and like in my book Saffron Ice Cream, The Shape of Home, um, Rose Weaves a Garden. Yeah, these are all came from my childhood memories and my root, like Persian root.
Yeah. And I love when, as a reader, we get to know that there's a little piece, there's always a piece of the author in the books, but to know that it is based on something, I think always means so much to readers. Could you pick one of those and give us a little snippet of what that's about so perhaps readers could find another book of yours they might like to pick up? Do you recommend? It's like asking that question of your favorite. Is there one you'd recommend readers start with be, along with your newest?
Um, you mean the future project or the one?
No, the books you've already written. If you could just recommend one more for us as readers, what should we pick up?
Okay, let me see. Oh, The Boy Who Said Wow. Um, and let me see. I really recommend Rumi.
Okay.
Um, because he's a great Persian poet. All the adults knows him very well, but children doesn't know his doesn't children don't know him very well, and they don't know anything about his poems itself. So the book I wrote, Rumi, Poet of Joy and Love, is like a biography of Rumi, and because his poetry is wonderful, but his personal life is also very inspiring.
Okay.
And when I was researching to write that book, um, I also came up with new information about his childhood and what actually influenced Rumi to become a great poet. So that was interesting that he got inspiration from another poet, another Persian poet, Attar. So it's a really good book, and there is no age limit for that one because adults also can enjoy it and learn so many things about his personal life.
Yeah. Well, I would say that about your book and about everybody's books too, right? There's no age limit on a beautiful picture book. Whether you're a young reader or you're an adult reader, I think there's something for all of us inside, and especially when it has such a beautiful message. So I know we have a lot of educators and librarians who listen who will be picking it up for their students, but I also know a lot of adults who listen because we are just addicted to picture books too. So I think you'll get both when they read.
Do you think we have time to mention another book? Another
Yes,
title?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Other one, The Boy Who Said Wow. Todd Buss wrote the story, and I did the illustration. I just love the story because it's based on a true story, and it's about an autistic kid who doesn't talk much. He's a very quiet kid, but he said his first word in the Mozart concert in Boston, which was wow. And it recorded in the radio. So I love that. I really recommend that book to parents.
That sounds wonderful. I will put links to both of those as well as the ones mentioned earlier in the show notes to make it easy for listeners and readers to just click on it and find it. Wonderful.
Thank you.
So where can listeners find you online or on social media if they want to know about more, they want to know more about you and your books?
Well, I mean, Instagram, like my first name and last name, Rashin Kheiriyeh. I mean, X. My website is russianart.com. And my books, they can get it from local stores or Amazon,
Yeah.
everywhere, like Barnes and Nobles.
I will put links there. And I do want to tell listeners, I was mentioning this to you before we recorded. I think everyone should go to your website, click, the books tab and just slowly scroll. It's like this meditative state because these covers are so beautiful.
Thank you.
They're different, their colors are different, but there is in some of them just this unifying something that is you that pulls them all together. And when you scroll through, I just did that for a couple of minutes when I should have been doing something else, and it was wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
So, listeners, that is your homework for this episode. You need to go to her website and you need to just have a 3-minute Zen experience looking at those books. They're beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today and for all of the books that you are helping put in the world for readers. They're beautiful. And I hope listeners will pick up your newest one today. It's gorgeous.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks for the listeners of your podcast. I also want to give some special thanks to my editor, Nancy Paulson, and my art director, Cecilia Young, in Penguin Kids, to help me bring the Seasons of Parastoo to life.
Yeah. It takes a village, right?
Exactly. It's a teamwork.
Well, thank you again. And listeners, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. And I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.